You don't belong here, Sophia. Leave this house now.
Uncle Victor, this is my father's home. Not anymore. You're not family.
I thought my life was perfect until that day. I stood in front of the iron gates of the mansion I grew up in, holding a small bag with my clothes, while security guards I had known since childhood looked away in shame. The same gates that used to open for me with smiles now stayed shut, guarded by men paid to keep me out. My chest was tight, my throat dry, and my eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. That was the moment my whole world cracked open. But to understand how I got there, I need to take you back 2 weeks earlier, to the day my father died. My name is Sophia, and I was my father's only child. Growing up, people called me Daddy's girl because everywhere he went, I followed. He was a wealthy businessman, respected across the city, a man who built his empire from nothing. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, my world shattered into pieces. I cried until my body had nothing left to give. But grief, I would soon learn, was the least of my problems. On the day of the will reading, the family gathered in the large sitting room of our mansion. Lawyers, relatives, family friends, everyone was there. I sat quietly, still in mourning clothes, expecting to hear my father's final wishes for me, his only daughter. But before the lawyer could even open the file, my Uncle Victor stood up. "Before we continue," he said, his voice cold and sharp, "there is something everyone needs to know. Sophia is not my brother's biological daughter." The room went silent. My heart stopped. I turned to look at him, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was a joke. But his face was serious, calm even, like he had rehearsed this moment for years. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. Victor's wife, Angela, placed a folder on the table. "We have proof," she said with a smirk. "Hospital records, DNA reports. Sophia is not blood. She has no legal claim to this family's wealth." I felt the floor disappear beneath me. The people who had hugged me at my father's funeral just days ago were now staring at me like a stranger, like I was a thief who had been caught red-handed. But what they didn't know was that this was only the beginning, and the truth they were trying to bury would soon destroy everything they had built. If you love stories about betrayal, justice, and powerful comebacks, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will shock you. I sat there, frozen, as the lawyer cleared his throat and looked at the documents Victor had handed him. My hands were trembling so much, I had to press them against my lap to keep them still. Every eye in that room was on me, but none of them were eyes of sympathy. They were eyes of judgment, of accusation, of people who had already decided I was guilty of a crime I didn't even understand. "This is impossible," I whispered. "My father raised me. He held me when I was a baby. He was at every school event, every birthday, every—" "Love doesn't make you blood," Angela cut in sharply. "He probably didn't even know. Or maybe he knew and felt sorry for your mother. Either way, the law doesn't care about feelings, sweetheart." The word sweetheart came out like poison. The lawyer, a thin man with tired eyes, looked at me with what I thought was pity. "Sophia, until this matter is resolved, the estate and company shares will be frozen. I'm sorry, but the documents presented appear legitimate." Appear. That word would haunt me for weeks. Within hours, my whole life was dismantled. My access to the family account was cut off. My father's lawyers I had known my entire life, suddenly couldn't get involved in family matters. Staff who used to greet me with warm smiles avoided my eyes. By evening, Victor's security team arrived at the mansion with a letter stating that I had 24 hours to vacate the premises since I had no legal right to remain. I spent that night in my childhood bedroom, the one with the cream walls and the small reading nook my father built for me when I was 8. I sat on the floor, surrounded by photo albums, staring at pictures of my father holding me as a baby, teaching me to ride a bicycle, walking me down to my first day of university. How could all of this be a lie? The next morning, I packed one bag. I didn't fight the guards. I didn't scream or cry in front of them. I had cried enough the night before to last a lifetime. As I walked through those gates, for what I thought was the last time, Angela stood by the door, arms crossed, watching me leave with a satisfied smile. "Don't bother coming back. This was never your home." I didn't respond. I just kept walking, my heart pounding with a mixture of grief and something else, something new, anger. And beneath that anger, a quiet, burning question that wouldn't leave me alone. If I wasn't my father's daughter, then why did he never tell me himself? That question would lead me somewhere none of them ever expected. For 3 days, I stayed in a small guest house owned by my best friend, Ngozi. She didn't ask too many questions. She just gave me a bed, food, and silence when I needed it. But on the 4th day, something inside me shifted. I stopped crying and started thinking. If my father wasn't really my father, there had to be evidence somewhere. Hospital records, my birth certificate, something. But if he was my father, and this was all a setup, then there had to be evidence of that too. Either way, the truth was somewhere, and I was going to find it. I started with the one place Victor and Angela never thought to check: my father's old study at his original family house, the smaller property he inherited from my grandparents before he became wealthy. It had been locked up for years, untouched, gathering dust. I still had the key, hidden inside a jewelry box my father gave me on my 18th birthday. The house smelled of old wood and forgotten time. Cobwebs hung in corners, and dust floated in the air like ghosts disturbed from sleep. I moved slowly through the rooms until I reached his study, a small room with a wooden desk, shelves of old books, and a metal filing cabinet in the corner. My hands shook as I opened the drawers. Old contracts, faded photographs, and then, at the bottom of the last drawer, wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from dust, I found a stack of letters tied together with a ribbon. I sat on the dusty floor and began to read. The first letter was from my grandmother, written decades ago to my grandfather. My eyes widened as I read the words. It spoke of a baby boy, not born to them, but taken in after a family tragedy, raised as their own, given their name. The letter begged my grandfather to never let the boy know the truth, for his own sake. My heart began to race. I dug further and found hospital admission records, old yellowed papers from a clinic that had closed down years ago. The name on the adoption file made my blood run cold. Victor, my uncle, the man who stood in that sitting room and called me an outsider, who froze my accounts and threw me out of my own home, was not my grandparents' biological son. He was adopted, secretly, and someone had spent decades making sure nobody ever found out. I sat there in the dust and silence, the papers trembling in my hands, my mind racing faster than my heart. If this was true, if I could prove this, then everything Victor had built, his claim, his position, his entire identity in this family, was a lie far bigger than anything he had accused me of. But proving it wouldn't be easy. And the moment Victor found out I was digging into the past, he would do everything in his power to bury it again, along with me. I spent the next 2 weeks moving carefully, like someone walking through a minefield. I couldn't go to Victor's lawyers. They were already against me. I couldn't go to the police without solid proof. So I did the only thing I could. I went looking for people who remembered the past. My grandmother had passed away years ago, but she had a sister, my great aunt Comfort, who still lived in a quiet town outside the city. I hadn't seen her since I was a child, but I remembered her warmth, the way she used to pinch my cheeks and call me Small Sophia. When I arrived at her small house, she welcomed me with open arms, completely unaware of the storm happening in the family. I told her everything, the will, the accusations, being thrown out. Her face grew darker with every word. "They called you an outsider?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger. "After everything your father did for that boy?" My breath caught. "What boy?" She sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that carries decades of secrets. "Victor," she said quietly. "Your grandmother's sister, my cousin Comfort, got pregnant outside marriage many years ago. It brought great shame to the family back then. The baby was given to your grandparents to raise as their own to protect everyone's reputation. Only a few of us ever knew the truth. Your father knew. He was older, he remembered everything. But he loved Victor like a real brother and never said a word. He protected him his whole life." I felt my whole body go numb. "Do you have any proof? Anything written down?" Comfort stood up slowly and walked to an old wooden trunk in the corner of her room. She pulled out a small bundle of documents, handwritten notes, an old church baptismal record with a different surname crossed out, and a black and white photograph of a young woman holding a baby, with a name written on the back that wasn't Victor's family name at all. "Your father gave me these years ago," she said. "He told me, 'Keep this safe, Auntie, just in case.' I think he knew something like this might happen one day." My hands trembled as I held the photograph. My father had known. He had protected Victor for decades, even given him a place in the family business, even treating him as an equal heir. And in return, Victor had used my father's death to try and steal everything, including erasing me from the family entirely. But now I had what I needed: hospital records, adoption letters, a baptismal certificate, a witness, and one more thing: Comfort agreed to testify in court. That night, as I prepared everything for the lawyers, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. When I picked up, a cold, familiar voice spoke. "I heard you've been visiting old relatives, digging up things that should stay buried. I'm warning you, Sophia. Drop this or you will regret it." I gripped the phone tightly, my heart pounding, but my voice came out steadier than I expected. "You should have thought about that before you threw me out of my own home, Uncle." I hung up. The war had officially begun, and there was no turning back now. The court date arrived faster than I expected. I walked into that courtroom with Comfort by my side, a folder of documents in my hands, and a calmness I didn't know I had. Victor and Angela sat across from us, dressed sharply, surrounded by expensive lawyers, looking confident, almost bored, as if this was a formality they would easily win. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, began by reviewing Victor's documents originally presented, the ones claiming I wasn't my father's biological daughter. My lawyer, a young woman named Fumi, whom Ngozi had connected me with, stood up calmly. "Your Honor, before we address my client's parentage, we would like to submit new evidence regarding the parentage of Mr. Victor, evidence that directly affects his legal standing to inherit from this family at all." Victor's smile faltered. Fumi presented everything: the adoption letters, the baptismal record, the hospital documents from the old clinic. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Victor's lawyer immediately objected, calling the documents forged and irrelevant, but the judge ordered an investigation and DNA testing for both Victor and myself, comparing our samples to remaining biological relatives from my grandparents' side. Victor stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. This is a desperate attempt by a desperate woman to—" "Sit down, Mr. Victor," the judge said firmly, "or I will have you removed from this courtroom." He sat, but I could see his hands clenching into fists. Comfort was called to testify. With a steady voice, despite her age, she told the court everything: the family secrets, the shame, the adoption, and how my father had spent his whole life protecting Victor's identity out of love and loyalty. She spoke of the photograph, the original name on Victor's baptismal record, and how my father had kept evidence safe just in case something like this ever happened. The DNA results were processed over the next few days, the longest days of my life. Ngozi stayed with me every night, reminding me to eat, to sleep, to breathe. I barely did any of those things. When the court reconvened, the judge held up 2 envelopes. The room fell completely silent. The results confirm, she said slowly, that Sophia is the biological daughter of the deceased. The DNA match with paternal relatives is conclusive. A wave of relief crashed over me, but the judge wasn't finished. The results also confirm, she continued, looking directly at Victor, that Mr. Victor shares no biological relation whatsoever to this family. The courtroom erupted into gasps. Angela's face went pale. Victor's lawyers shuffled through papers frantically, but there was nothing left to argue. For months, they had called me an impostor, a fraud, an outsider who didn't belong. And now, in front of everyone, the family, the lawyers, the press that had gathered outside, the truth stood exposed. The real outsider had been sitting at the head of the table all along.
The weeks that followed moved like a storm finally breaking after months of unbearable pressure. The court ruled fully in my favor. My father's estate, frozen for months, was released back to me. Ownership of the company's shares, all of it, was legally restored under my name. The mansion gates that once shut me out now opened the moment I arrived, the same security guards bowing their heads, this time in respect, not shame. Victor and Angela's world collapsed overnight. The company board, hearing of the scandal, immediately voted to remove Victor from his position. News of the case spread quickly. Family heiress proved inheritance fraud, uncovers decades-old secret, became the headline everywhere. The same relatives who had turned their backs on me during the will reading now called, sending messages, suddenly remembering how much they always believed in me. I didn't return their calls. But here is where the story takes its final turn, the part that surprised even me. While going through my father's private safe at the mansion, I found one more letter, written in his own handwriting, dated years before his death. It was addressed to me. In it, he explained everything. He had known about Victor's true origins since he was a teenager. He had watched his parents, my grandparents, raise Victor with love, give him their name, their legacy, everything to protect him from the shame society would have placed on him. My father said he made a promise to never let that secret destroy Victor's life, because a man should not be punished for a truth he had no control over, only for the choices he makes with it. He ended the letter with these words: "If anything ever threatens what is rightfully yours, fight for it, my daughter, but never let revenge turn you into someone I wouldn't recognize." I sat with that letter for a long time. When everything was settled, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. I didn't strip Victor and Angela of everything. I allowed them to keep a modest house on the outskirts of the city and gave them enough money to start over, quietly, without scandal, without further humiliation in the media. Some called me weak for it, but I knew the truth. My kindness hurt Victor more than any revenge ever could, because in the end, his downfall wasn't caused by me. It was caused by his own greed, his own lies, his own decades of pretending to be something he wasn't, all while looking down on the one person who was truly, rightfully, family. I kept my father's name alive. I rebuilt what was nearly stolen from me, and I learned that the truth, no matter how long it's buried, always finds its way to the light. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that justice always comes, sometimes when you least expect it. Stay strong, stay patient, and never let anyone make you feel like a stranger in your own story.